Today's show is brought to you by Brautag.com. Brautag, the new Brautag Premium Brewing System, is a high-quality HERMS system developed by yours truly to take your brewing to the next level. And by yours truly, I mean Todd and James. The Brautag consists of 3 premium stainless steel 20-gallon kettles, perfect for brewing 15-gallon batches, and each comes equipped with durable ball valves and easy-to-use stainless steel quick connects. The Brautag controller is an innovative, no-nonsense controller developed to make your brew day better. It's easy to understand, which makes it easier for you to fully control the brewing process. Dial in your temperatures with ease and control the entire process at the flick of a switch or the push of a button. The Brautag also comes with 2 premium centrifugal pumps and all the necessary cables conveniently labeled just for you. Go to Brautag.com and learn more about our special introductory offer, which includes $500 off MSRP, free shipping, and a ton of free add-ons, such as a 15-gallon recipe kit of your choice, 3 packs of liquid imperial yeast, a premium refractometer, pH meter and testing kit, a 1-year membership to Brewer's Friend Premium, SandStep sanitizer, Brew Clean, and more. Head over to Brautag.com to find a list of our retail partners and let us help make your brew day better.
Now I'd like to hand it off to our speakers for today, Joshua, Todd, and James. Take it away.
Mark, thank you, my friend, and thank you everyone for joining us. My name is Joshua Stubing, and I'm excited to welcome you to our 2021 HomebrewCon presentation, Brewing on a HERMS setup, featuring the Brautag Brewing System. It took me like 100 tries to pronounce that word right. It's not Brautag, it's Brautag. We had such a good time at last year's HomebrewCon Online presenting on draft beer systems and building a keezer, so we were pumped to be welcomed back by the AHA to do another session this year. A little bit about us as the Homebrew Happy Hour. I'm one of the co-hosts, and I'm also the content curator for HomebrewHappyHour.com, which is an expansive informational website with articles and videos covering a wide variety of topics for homebrewers and craft beer enthusiasts. Our aforementioned weekly podcast is a community question submitted Q&A show all about brewing, and we also interview industry professionals and showcase homebrewers from all across the world. Our newly named Trub Club is our growing homebrew club where members can receive monthly or bi-monthly recipe kits, which include premium liquid yeast from our friends at Imperial Yeast, as well as other swag, all while supporting our efforts as a resource dedicated to keeping the craft of making beer at home alive and thriving. You can learn more about the Trub Club by going to HomebrewHappyHour.com/club. And now these are the actual guys doing the bulk of the work, and I'm running camera too. Sorry for my armpit. I'm not sweating yet, even though we're in Texas. The first off, right over there, the shorter of our 2 individuals, Mr. Todd Burns is the president and resident chief keg washer at Keg Connection LLC, and he's also one of the co-hosts of the Homebrew Happy Hour podcast. Todd has been brewing since 1984. I wasn't even born yet, not to make you feel old, and started Keg Connection LLC in 2006. Keg Connection LLC, which operates KegConnection.com and HomebrewSupply.com, is still family owned and operated out of Comanche, Texas, and has grown to be an international supplier of draft beer equipment and home brewing supplies. Todd has a very eclectic taste when it comes to beer and enjoys virtually all styles. Also joining us over there, that handsome fellow, we call him James Carlson. He's the Director of Operations at CM Becker International. CMB has been the worldwide standard for high-quality homebrew disconnects and premium faucet and dispensing solutions for over 45 years. If you're using homebrew kegs in your setup, there's a good chance you're using a CM Becker product, and if you're not using a CM Becker product, there's a good chance you're upset about it because you got leaks or breaking down stuff, or I'll stop sucking up to James. James is also a co-host of the Homebrew Happy Hour podcast and has been an avid homebrewer since 2002. His favorite styles include German ales and lagers. With that being said, let me turn this over to Todd and James, and we'll get our seminar for HomebrewCon 2021 kicked off on brewing on a HERMS setup featuring the Brautag Brewing System.
All right. Well, cheers, everyone, and Prost to you, James.
Prost. Cheers.
Yes.
Definitely cheers.
So we're going to talk about HERMS today, and we're going to talk about the Brautag. First thing I wanted to do is talk about some different brewing systems and what the differences are. If you've been brewing very long, you've probably heard the term HERMS and you've heard the term REMS. Similar systems. I'm going to kind of go over those first. You know, I'm not a huge fan of acronyms, as anybody that works with me knows, but I think you kind of need them with these because they're very long names. So HERMS is Heat Exchange Recirculating Mash System, and REMS is Recirculating Infusion Mash System. So that's great, but what's the difference really? This is HERMS in that we're using two vessels. We're heating this coil using a heating element. Water comes in and out and circulates, and that's what heats your wort up over here, or your strike water, or whatever it happens to be at that moment. And what that does is give you very, very consistent heating. You'll start to see the gauges when you go into the controller, they really start to level out and have the same temperature across the board. It also, with a REMS system, one of the issues that you can run into is if you get a stuck mash or you have some other issues, your heating element is actually in the same vessel. So you don't have this vessel at all. It still circulates, but if you have a circulation problem, you have a you have a stick, anything like that, you could actually burn or scorch the wort. And that's one of the reasons we kind of prefer the HERMS system ourselves.
Yeah, and you can see by the coil that there's no way that can happen because the element is in the water, and the water is the one doing the heat exchanging. That's what we love about it.
Yeah. So we tend to brew pretty much all the time on a HERMS system now, but the three of us have collectively and individually brewed on pretty much every type of system out there. Josh, you still occasionally brew on a cooler brew system that you have, I believe?
Frequently. We have the cooler brew 10-gallon. I love doing 5-gallon batches on that one because it bothers you.
Yeah, it's totally old school.
Yeah. I always use HERMS unless I'm doing a 5-gallon batch, and I never do 5-gallon batches anymore, so I always use the HERMS. But there's a lot of good all-in-ones out there that we've brewed on, and a lot of other good systems. So, you know, we like all types of brewing, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So I talked a little bit about the HERMS system and how it works, or the HERMS system and the hot liquor tank and how it works. But I'm actually going to let James explain the controller because he's the brains behind the controller. So we'll let you explain that. I'm the simpleton that insisted that the controller be simple.
Well, first of all, we've been working on this for quite a while, and we've gone back and forth with how we want to do a controller. Do we want an app? A lot of things. And then at the end of the day, you just want something simple. You don't want something you have to program. And Todd and I both agreed with this. This is the easiest way because our controllers, you don't have to program. You can calibrate really easy and fast. So you can get to your brew day and you don't have to worry about the specifics of the controller. So basically what you do is you just turn a knob, you know, and this first one controls the heat in the HLT. So normally what I want to do is I want to have it about 5 degrees over my strike temp. So I'll turn it up to, if I'm hitting 52, I'll go to 57. But the cool thing about HERMS is it doesn't really matter because it'll stabilize in just a few minutes anyway. So if you miss it by 1 or 2 degrees, you can get where you want to go real quick by just adjusting the HERMS control. Another thing about the controller we like is the fact that it has an inlet and an outlet temperature here. Now that's all this mash controller does. It really doesn't control anything other than it just shows you temperatures. So Todd and I like that because we can see what temperature we've got going in, what we've got going out. They can also be an indicator of circulation and so forth. So that's another good option. The coolest thing about this system is the fact that we can do boil percentages, or as a percentage of output to the element with just turning a knob. You don't even have to push a button. So that's what we like about that. The controller's easy to use. It's easy to control the temperature on the HERMS, the mash. The mash shows you where you're at, and it's easy to adjust the percentage of power to the boil. Everything is really cool. It's got an alarm. It's just a simple beep. We've got illuminated switches for the pump and the water pump. We've got element indicators for the HLT and the boil, and just, like I said, a simple timer. Everything's labeled. It's super easy to use.
Yep. So the next thing I want to do is just we'll go through each vessel. The first one is the hot liquor tank. As we mentioned before, this has a coil. This is a 50-foot stainless steel coil, 1/2-inch diameter. And what this does is give you a lot of surface area. So when you heat this heating element up, and you heat this water up and you start circulating, you're going to heat the other vessel up quickly because you have so much flow and so much surface area. The electrical part of it is pretty straightforward. It uses a NEMA 1430 plug. So a lot of you may not know what that is, but it's the plug that any modern dryer would use, a 30-amp plug that any modern dryer would use. So there's a very good chance you actually already have this plug in your house. I actually set up a separate one in my brewing area because my wife doesn't like it when I brew, and she can't dry clothes all day. Well, nobody in the house likes it. No, she didn't want to share the outlet. So I put my own in. It works very well. It's plenty of power to get you up to speed quickly, so it works really well. Also on this system, you've got very easy to take off, put on, quick disconnects. We put oversized fittings on this so you get really good flow. These fittings are very large. The hose itself is a silicone hose, but it's actually a little bit harder durometer, so it will not bend. Like a lot of them, if you start to bend them just a little bit, they'll kink. And these don't kink near as easy, so you don't have to worry about stopping your flow and kinking like you might on some of the systems that we've used to brew with in the past. So what is the actual process? The process, again, is you're circulating this water. A lot of what we're going to talk, a lot of what happens here is in both vessels, even though I'm going to describe the other one. But that circulation is key to this, and having good circulation is wonderful. So at this point, I'm going to let you explain the mash tun and kind of how these work together.
Sure. Okay, so when you start off on a HERMS system, Todd talked about heating up the HLT. Well, we're getting to the point where we're going to introduce the grains to the heated water. Now, the one thing that I would stress with any kind of HERMS system, circulation is key. Keep your water to grain ratio at least 1.5 to 1.
Yeah.
We found that promotes better flow. If you try to go a little less than that, you could risk a stuck mash, and that can create a whole lot of other problems that you don't want. I haven't seen a difference as far as the brew and how the difference in the taste between a 1 to 1 or a 1.5 to 1. And if you're brewing on a HERMS system, you got total control over the temperature and the sugars you're creating. So you want good flow, don't worry about it. We've been doing this for years, and 1.5 to 1 is a really good ratio. You can even go higher than that. There's been times when we actually misjudged the water to grain ratio and actually had too much, and went ahead and let it go, and we made good beer. So circulation is key, and this system works really good. The cool thing about the false bottom is it's actually above the drain. In some systems, you have a center drain and it sits on the floor with maybe a 1/2-inch spacer, and that's all well and good, but we like the fact that we can collect wort from this whole area above the drain, and it also produces a little clear wort.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
and
it's very clear.
We're lucky that we have the false bottom, has lots of holes, it circulates good. Another thing to think about too is you got to watch your grain crush. You don't want to do like a brew in a bag, because that won't promote flow. So just keep your grain crush. I like to do within 40 and 45 thousandths, but somewhere around in that area will work, and it'll also create flow, and you'll get a grain bed established. So that being said, you've got your mash done. The next thing you do is sparge. Mm-hmm. So what I do when we're sparging, or I'm getting ready to sparge, the last 10 minutes or so of the regular mash, I'll go ahead and crank the controller up to about 175 degrees. there's that temperature offset. You can actually go more, but you've got heat soak afterwards once you hit a target that you've got to compensate for. The cool thing, I use 175. It'll get to sparge temp, you know, between 168 and 170 degrees fairly quick. So you get there, immediately set your controller so that you don't go overshoot that, because you don't want tannins in the beer. Never run into that, but that's how I was taught. What we use is this sparge arm. And the cool thing about the sparge arm is it slows the water flow down so it doesn't disturb the grain bed. So what we found is that gives it, you want even flow over the entire grain bed you want every drop of sugar you can get in your, because that's money. Grains cost money, and you want your efficiency as high as you can without pushing anything you don't want. But we found that this sparge arm works real good. We have an undisturbed grain bed, good flow.
And that's actually works good for mashing and sparging.
Yeah, you know,
which we didn't expect, right?
Right, I didn't expect it. So because of the fact that the head of the nozzle is fairly large, it does still slow it down. We still have good flow without a lot of velocity into the grain bed. So the one thing that on a HERMS system you got to remember is when you start to sparge, you're going to have to do some hose arrangement. And Todd has been real good with the Brautag that he's got a schematic that has colors and letters on the hoses, so it's fairly easy to know the hose orientation the first couple of times you do it.
You change the hoses about 3 times, and you've got a photo you can look at, color-coded, lettered, and you boom, boom, boom. You can really set it up quick and move it around quick, so it helps a lot.
So let's show you real quick what's going on. So we've got the HLT circulates water from the bottom to the top, so that keeps the temperature the same from the top to the bottom. Okay, everybody knows about that. We have a wort pump over here, a water pump over here. The mash tun, the outlet goes to the inlet of the pump. It circulates through the HERMS coil into the mash tun, and that's where you get your regular mashing cycle. When you get ready to sparge, you're going to have to use the water from the HLT as a supply for sparging on top of the grains. What you have to do is you have to just move a couple of hoses. First thing I do is I shut off all the valves. You don't want any valves open, and turn the pumps off. Make sure you do that, because if you don't do it, you could get burned. First hose I move is I take this hose off, and I move the water pump that's pumping back into the HLT. I will move it over to the mash tun inlet. Okay? So what that's doing is that's pumping HLT water over the grain bed as you're rinsing the sugars off. Now the next thing is the hose I just pulled off going to the mash tun. I'm going to add that. Now you've got the supply hose here. Let me change so you can see. This is the supply hose to the coil. Now you'll want to get a bucket under that, because you want to catch all that wort. And once again, make sure your valves are closed over here. You're going to start, there's a lot of wort in the coil. So that being said, you hook the outlet of the pump. Remember, on these pumps, most checker pumps, the center is always the suction side. The side is always the pressure side. So in, out. And even if the pump inlet is off to the side, you'll see it hit in the center. So outlet goes to the bottom valve on the boil kettle. All the valves are shut. Now what you want to do is you want to open up both inlet valves for the mash and the HLT. Then you can go in and you can turn your pumps on, and you want to match the flow. This is the secret. You want a good slow 45-minute sparge. Yeah. You want to match what's flowing into the boil kettle with what's flowing into the mash kettle. This is something you've got to watch over, because you don't want to overflow here, and you don't want to underflow or overflow here as well. So just keep an eye on it. You want a nice, slow, steady sparge. We do it. I have run it over before by not watching it. You got to keep an eye on it, keep the flow right. As long as you do that, you're good. And then once you're done with your sparge, shut off all your valves, and you're ready to boil.
The valve part, can I interject? That's what's important. I don't know if you remember, James, when I did a solo brew day, I didn't have it turned off when I was moving it from the pumps. And you were staring at me with just a horrific look on your face because the hot...
As your hand started to
As my hand started to boil up. And,
Yeah, well, it was because he was trying to connect the hose with wort flowing out. And I can't stress this enough. With a HERMS system, you've got fluid moving through coils and hoses.
You gotta be careful.
Before you make any change, make sure your controller's shut off, pump-wise, and every valve is closed off. And then also get a pair of brewing gloves. I mean, Blinkman makes a great pair of brewing gloves, just so you don't burn yourself. And no, don't try to attach a hose if it's flowing. First thing you need to do is shut the pumps off and turn a valve off, and you'll be all right.
Yeah, but don't tell me what to do. But don't tell me what to do.
I'm sorry, Josh.
No, he said, first you gotta do this. I said, no, you don't tell me what to do. I'll burn my hand. And no, here's the most exciting part of the HERMS presentation. It's the boil kettle, right, Mr. Burns?
Yeah, absolutely. But I do want to mention one more thing about this. You talked about a 45-minute sparge here, and we know we're going to have an hour to 90-minute boil depending on the recipe and the situation. So there's things you can't control the time on, and there's things you can control the time on. One of the things I normally do when I'm deciding that I'm going to brew, a lot of times I end up brewing in the morning, and what I'll do is the night before, I'll go ahead and get all this set up, get the amount of water I want on here. I'll fill this tank almost to the top. And the reason I do that, I'm going to talk about cleaning later, is I want to be able to have some water, hot water left over to use for my cleaning. So I'm not going to use all of it in the sparge, but it's really nice. You're already heating the water. You might as well heat enough up for the cleaning. So I do that, and then the other thing that I do is I heat the water up the night before to like 180, 190 degrees, whatever you're comfortable with. And then before I go to bed, I'll turn everything off. I'll throw a couple of blankets on it, put the lids on first, of course. And when I wake up in the morning and I'm ready to brew, I'm almost at strike temp. I'm not that far off. So I can remove, 45 minutes, an hour from the brew day just by preheating everything.
That's a big deal, especially when you're doing an all grain you have to set aside, 5-6 hours for a brew?
Yeah. And it goes a lot faster if you have everything heated up first. So that's one of the things I do. So they told me I could talk about the boil kettle. I don't know what to say. It boils, right? It's the part of the process that really doesn't change between systems. So it doesn't matter if it's a HERMS system or if you're doing an extract kit. You're still going to go through the same process boiling. And I think pretty much everybody watching this presentation knows that process. So you do your hop schedule, do your other additives. I'm not going to go into great detail on it. Some of the things I will point out, though, we do have this top fitting where it's shooting to the side. There's a reason for that. What that's doing is you're making a whirlpool. And towards the end of the boil, you're going to do this whirlpool, and you're going to put all the solids in the middle, and so that when you're pulling the wort off at the end for fermentation, you've got a much clearer wort that you're starting with the fermentation. And you can see it in the video that he's showing there, how it's circling around. You'll also notice at the same time that there's a cooling in there. Sorry to run off screen there. So what I do is about 15 minutes before the boil's over, I go ahead and put this chiller. This is a 50-foot stainless steel chiller. I put that in, and by putting it in at that point, of course, that means that I'm killing all the little buggies and it's sanitized, and I don't have to worry about that. I also use a chiller, and we sell these on Keg Connection. This is one option. I actually use the full-size coil when I chill as well.
On both. He pre-chills the water going into the coil.
I don't know that, this chills pretty well, but I actually already had one, so I might as well use it, right? So,
you're the boss.
But these chill as well, pretty well. So what I do is I put it in 15 minutes before, and at that point, I also start that whirlpool. So I'm doing two things at once. And then when I get to the very end of the boil and I'm ready to shut everything down, this is ready to go. I do keep the I do keep the flow. I do keep the whirlpool going the whole time that I'm doing the cool down. And I will generally have this in a bucket, but I don't put ice in the bucket at this point. I let this wort, the water that's flowing from the hose, I let that take the temperature down to a little under 100 degrees. It depends on the time of year and the situation, but say 95 degrees or so. Then I will put ice in the bucket, put the chiller in there again, and it will rapidly drop this down to your fermentation temperature. So I find that's a good way to do it. I think you do it similar as well.
And in your area, you may not necessarily need to do that, but here in Texas, we can see tap water coming out of the hydrant at 97 degrees. We did that one year. But that's not going to get you under 100. So if you have the same issue that we have, or you're that same area, that makes a huge difference.
Another thing, I'm going to go into cleaning in more detail in a moment. But one of the other things that I do is when we're finished, or we're not finished with the sparge, we're doing the sparge and we're putting liquid in here, we're putting wort in here. Mm-hmm. What I will do is I will turn this element off, turn this element on when we start to get a little bit above that heating element, so that I can start, again, take some time off the brew day by starting the heating a little faster. I find that works really well and allows me to quicken up the day.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is just make sure your wort is over the sensor probe.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I didn't mention that. That way
you know where you're at, and because you want to watch the temperature when you go to reduce power on the element. And if that sensor probe's not covered, you don't really know where you're at. If you overshoot, and you can start boiling the wort or scorching the wort on the element. So just make sure the sensor probe is covered in wort.
Yeah. And
then you're good.
So then once you, now you're going to start the fermentation process. I use a lot of different fermenters. The one I use the most is I have a glycol chilled system from Spike. Love that system. Great works really well. And when I can use that, I do. But unfortunately, I brew more than that. So sometimes I also use buckets. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll put my lager in the chilled one, and then I'll leave it in there for quite a while because I like the lager for a while. And then I like to cold crash for a while, and do all of those things. So a lot of times I'll use buckets. It doesn't matter. Either one works great. What we do, we actually have a little tool here where you're going out, you're going into the pump, and you're going to here. You can just put this on. You hand me another hose, James.
Yeah, you can add, that's the cool thing. We talked about earlier the long hose that's used to go to the HLT coil. You can use that because you're not using it at the time to transfer, to clean, a lot of things.
So at this point, I turn the pump on, and if I'm using my tall fermenter, I can come up here and shoot it down to the bottom. I get lots of aeration, I get lots of oxygen. And then if I'm brewing by myself and I don't have a third hand, I turn the valve off or turn the pump off, and I will pitch the yeast after I have a little bit in there, and then I will continue to shoot that in until it's completely full, until I have all the wort out. And it's aerating the whole time. And if I'm using buckets, I'll just do this. I'll shoot them between all three buckets and try to get them all pretty even. And then when I'm done, I, of course, turn it off. And at that point, you seal it up, and you'll be amazed at how fast it starts fermenting. I've actually brewed 2 batches in one day, and when I finished the second batch, the first batch was already bubbling. So that's a pretty cool brew day. So on cleaning, one of the things that I failed to mention earlier is I start the cleaning process while I'm brewing. So one of the things that I do is when we're transferring this wort over here, I will actually go ahead when I get to the point where I'm put my first hop addition in. By the way, when you put your first hop addition in, I always like to run over here and just turn this down so that I don't have a boil over. Sometimes when you throw that first hop in, you can get a boil over. I put it in and boom, turn it right back up again. And usually it's gonna be somewhere around 75 to 80%, depending on your situation where you have a good rolling boil. I know I have a good steady boil now. I've got a little bit of time before my next hop edition. I'll go ahead and take all the grains out of here, scoop them into a couple of buckets so they're not too heavy. I feed that to my chickens, but you may bake bread with it or throw it in the trash, but you get it out of there to get rid of the weight. And then I take everything off of this. I drain the water out, a little bit that's left on the bottom, because you always have that at the end of the sparge. I get that out, and then I just run that thing outside, give it a good rinse, rinse the false bottom on both sides, make sure all the grain's out. I might throw a little brew clean, a couple tablespoons of brew clean and a little hot water so I can kind of soap everything out. I run a little water through these, and that's clean. You've already finished that, and it didn't take any time. It doesn't include the brewing time, because you did it while you were waiting for this to happen. So then that's done, finished everything. Everything's in fermenters. I'm ready to clean the rest of the system. So to clean the rest of the system, I immediately take this boil kettle. I take it outside. I rinse it real quick with it. I just have a sprayer and turn it upside down. And then I put pretty good amount of brew clean in at this point. I put maybe 4 or 5 tablespoons. And I just fill it up to where it goes over the top of the heating element. And the reason for that is that's the one thing that will kind of get maybe some hard water deposits, a little bit of stuff from the grains, and that sticks on there. I find that if I do that, then I let that soak, and I move over and I clean the rest of the system. The rest of the system is very easy to clean because you've already got this hot water that you saved. So you take the hot water that you saved, you run that out into the pump. James told me earlier today that he actually runs it out of this pump into that pump and then back. And
and it's super simple. You just run them in a series. So you can take the inlet from that you were using on one of the chillers. Like I always just grab this hose. I don't know if y'all can see me, but I'll move this hose and stick it on. Another thing cool about our pumps is we put magnets, and you can mount them.
Yeah, you can put them wherever you want.
Anywhere you want. And I'll put that there. And then the outlet, I use the long hose that we took off earlier. And sorry, you need to go on the inlet of that pump outlet. That's going into the coil.
Yeah.
And then you can take, we include a little 90 degree with a connector and a hose. You can put that on there. That flushes your coil into a bucket. Once it goes clear, you can just recirculate it through your HLT if you want to add some Barkeeper's Friend or any brew clean.
Yeah.
You can clean it that way, and it's simple. It works good, and you get all the buggies out.
Works really well, and then once you're done, now you've run hot water and possibly brew clean if you added some brew clean to it, and you've circulated through both the pumps and the coil. You've cleaned everything. And remember, the hot liquor tank, all it's had in there the entire time is clean water, so it's already clean. All you got to do is just kind of wipe it out, get everything dry before you store it, and you're done cleaning. There's just not much to it at all.
Yeah,
it's fast and easy. So that's really that's the whole brew day on the system.
Sorry, I zoned out when you started cleaning.
Yeah, I know. Josh is not a huge fan of cleaning. He generally likes to watch us brew, and then at the end he jumps in and drinks a beer and watches us clean.
Correct.
So yeah. But anyway, you've got a pretty quick brew day, and you end up with anywhere from 15 to 17 gallons of beer in your fermenters, and depending on what you do, and
I brew 5 when you brew 15. Yeah. I mean, that's absolutely. That's my thought.
You've been hanging around Todd enough.
So I don't know where we are on time, Josh, but I think we can take some questions.
We do. We have about 10 minutes left. Before we go to questions, let me
get a beer.
Yeah, y'all get a beer. But listen to me while you're getting your beer, and remember your mic is on, so no one wants to hear that. It's not ASMR. They don't want to hear you slurping. I did notice though, before I get to some of the questions, that there were a lot in the chat. People understandably are like, man, like one guy, he was saying, I just watched John Blickman, which, hi John, you're probably not watching this, you just presented.
It's cool.
He just did a thing on all-in-one, and the guy's like, man, this sounds more complicated. I get that, right? That's the kind of feedback a lot of people. I'll start by saying this: we are living in the best time ever to be a home brewer. That there are so many options to how to make good beer at home. If you have a little apartment and you still want to make craft beer at home, those all-in-ones are wonderful. And even if you want to make them at any level, all-in-ones are great. The reason why, though, I want y'all to maybe touch on why HERMS is where we went with how we're brewing every day is because mainly control and mimicking what production breweries their methods, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing too is, we're trying to do a presentation in 40 minutes. You got to remember that you've got like 5-6 hours to do all this. So it's not rushing around. I got to do this. I got to do this.
Yeah.
You got plenty of time to reset your hoses, to do all these steps, because we're condensing a fairly long process
4 or 5
into
brew day.
we're on 5 times or 6 times speed. So it is extremely easy to brew on. We've got great instructions. We've got a great video and
good support. I mean,
that's what I was going to throw out there too. Obviously, there is a bunch of HERMS system out there, and we've brewed on a bunch. That's why that's what made us love HERMS systems and wanting to develop one ourselves, which is now the Brautag. But HERMS, like I said, the control of it is my favorite thing. And also, we didn't record it because I was slightly embarrassed about what I may have captured. I did a solo brew day on it. If you don't follow us at Homebrew Happy Hour, the whole I'm inept thing, it's not really a shtick, guys. Like I'm pretty straight. I need things straightforward. And I think I was the final test for Todd.
Yeah, we refused to help him.
He did. And rudely, James like reached out to help me and Todd goes, no. Leave him alone.
That's a habit.
Anyway, we do have some formal questions. Well, actually, first, I don't think she intended to be a question, but she put it in there. Annie Johnson came in and said she wanted to give an early shout out to Todd and say hello to you. Thanks for watching us.
Thank you.
Hey, Annie.
Annie, it's always about you, Todd. It's always about you. Yeah. Greg asked.
I want my breakfast beer, Annie. I'm ready to go back.
No kidding. Yeah, that club night is what I miss the most about.
Oh, amen.
Not being in person. And if I drink enough here, I may dress in a costume at
But we have our own club night here.
Our own club
That's
night.
right. Yeah.
Greg asked, "Is there any timer function? I'd like to have the system come up to temp early in the morning." Like Todd said, he gets it preheated the night before and then shuts it off.
Yeah.
There is no functionality in regards to pre-planning.
I'm very, very nervous about automatically starting the system and running it because, it's a system. And if you ever have a failure and you're nowhere around, you could burn out your element, you could burn out your pumps.
You can have a flood.
Yeah, I just, the timer really is just to time your actions. It's not controlling anything. So I like, that's the reason I do the preheat.
And then Michael asked, what do you see as the advantages and disadvantages of a HERMS setup over a RIMS or a different traditional 3-vessel setup?
That's easy. No scorched wort. I mean, without a doubt. Even if you think about it this way, even if you have recirculation issues or a stuck mash, you don't have anything that can uncover the element. The element is in its own vessel with its own water. And that's the one thing years ago when we started down this path is I had a couple of issues with an all-in-one burning the element or burning the wort. And with this system, you can't do it. I mean, it's passing through a coil that's immersed in heated water.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love the fact that you can't damage the wort profile.
In fact, one interesting thing, we have brewed on a lot of HERMS systems. Different systems and controllers that we've put together, a lot of other systems that are out there on the market, we've brewed on a lot of them. And I will say this, using a HERMS systems, we have never lost a batch of beer. We have come close. Yeah. We have stuck a mash. We have had the wrong hose size during development. We've used other systems that had issues that caused us to have to take all of the wort out of here and put it back in. But you know what? We just take it. We got a little issue. We got to fix it. I think that the way that we've designed this, we haven't had that issue with this one, like some of the other issues we run into. But if you ever do have an issue, the great thing is if you have a stuck mash, you have some sort of issue like that, you are not going to scorch your wort. And you're not going to ruin your batch. You can recover the batch and you can keep brewing
or burn
and you
an
can
element
finish it.
too.
Right. Yeah.
And some of those all-in-ones, if you burn the element on an all-in-one, you got to buy a new one. You can't replace it. It's spotted into the bottom, the base of the unit. So Todd's exactly right. We've had some issues that pop up. The thing that I like about it, like I said, I like the fact that I can't scorch the wort. I have complete control over the profile and body and dryness, and you dictate how you want the beer to be.
All right,
and you have control.
Sorry, we got time for a couple more questions, and then we got to wrap it up. Do I need a metal table, or can these kettles go on any hard surface?
Yeah, any hard surface.
Yeah.
I used tile and made a table in my brew room, my first brew room, and it worked great. I used epoxy one time and it didn't do great because it got a little too hot for it. So I think a ceramic tile is a great surface. Any other kind of metal surface is a good surface. Yeah.
Well, you say any. What about like how people, they make the 3-tier out of pallets? If they like pallet surface, I can't imagine you want to put it on that, right? Like
it's a lot of weight. Weight's an issue.
Right,
so you're talking about 60 gallons of water and the weight of the equipment.
But you're not worried about the heat on top of one.
Not really.
Not really.
It's just boiling temperature. It's not fire temperature.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe I'm too dumb to understand the difference. That's always I forget y'all don't have headphones. I can't whisper things. Or maybe I can whisper things. Y'all won't hear me. All right, one last question, and then we're going to wrap it up. How can I convince my wife to let me buy a system like this? They seem expensive. You're not wrong, but...
Beg for forgiveness.
Maybe buy it and then, beg for forgiveness later. That's a good idea. We have financing... we're going to have financing on Keg Connection and Homebrew Supply.
That helps.
Right now, Keg Outlet is another company that's selling it, and they have financing in place today. That would be a good way to do it. You can finance it for, I believe, up to 36 months. So,
0%, yeah.
If you qualify, 0%. But in any case, you can finance it up to 36 months.
My credit is 320, and my percentage was 18, I think.
Yeah, you're not going to get approved.
Your credit, I know your credit. It's a lot better than that.
Gary wrote in the chat. He said, "It will make your wife happy." We can't agree more.
Yes.
It will be.
Beer is good and healthy, and it will make your wife happy.
And to wrap up that question, and then segue into our outro,
or your husband.
I will say this, that it is an investment, but it is worth it if your goal is to make consistently good beer. Look, if you're getting into a HERMS setup, you're not, hey, I want to brew beer one day. You've already been brewing. You know what good beer can taste like, and you want to do it consistently. I think that's who these systems are for, is for people to have the complete control over their entire brew process. And then that's when you add in like the glycol fermentation to take that next step, post-boil step, to the next level. And so on and so
baby
forth.
steps.
When you have somebody come over that maybe you don't even know, and they try a beer and they're like, "Really, you brewed that? I've had homebrew before. This is really good, though."
And if your spouse is on, if your spouse is on the fence, brew their favorite styles. Boom.
Yeah.
Game changer right there.
I just like the fact that you've got full control over what you're doing.
Right.
Yes.
And you can do 15 gallons, and you won't scorch your wort.
If all you're ever going to do is brew 5-gallon batches, though, brew beer no matter what you brew on.
Absolutely.
That's what we want you to do, is brew beer and enjoy the hobby.
That's right.
Absolutely.
And guys, that'll do it. Todd, James, thank you so much for your time. Again, y'all can check us out weekly at homebrewhappyhour.com. Before we go, we want to thank again the AHA for having us back and for giving us a platform to hang out with you all today. A big thanks to our retail partners, CM Becker International, homebrewsupply.com, kegconnection.com, kegoutlet.com, brewersfriend.com, and of course, Imperial Yeast for their continued support of the home brewing community and for all the sweet freebies they've contributed to the launch of our new Brautag system. Remember that as a special limited time introductory offer, you can get one of these Brautag systems for $500 off. Plus, you'll get a 15-gallon recipe kit of your choice from Homebrew Supply or any of the retailers selling it, which includes 3 packs of premium liquid Imperial Yeast. You'll get a 1-year membership to brewersfriend.com Premium, a refractometer with a hard case, a pH meter testing kit with testing strips, a 16-ounce bottle of of Sand Step Sanitizer, a 1-pound bag of Brew Clean powdered equipment cleanser, and all of this is about a $350 value plus free shipping to anywhere within the contiguous U.S. If you're ready to take your brewing to the next level, go to brautag.com and take advantage of the current offer. Again, that's BRAUTAG.com. And don't forget to visit us at homebrewhappyhour.com/club if you'd like to join our Trub Club and get big discounts to our retail partners, as well as our monthly or bi-monthly recipe receiving options, which also come with imperial yeast and free shipping. I know that was a whole lot of information, but we thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you all in person at next year's HomebrewCon 2022, and we hope that you enjoy the rest of the conference. Guys,
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank y'all for joining us. Take care, guys.